Dear friends in Jesus Christ, today I am back with you with the theme Life's Call for Action. Life is calling all of us to the corridors of humanity. War is always a tragedy, all of us know. It sometimes seems inevitable too. But is it ever justified is the question. Philosophers, theologians, politicians, and military leaders struggle with this question for millennia. Many religions, including Judaism, Islam, and Hinduism, have traditions about when war might be justifiable. Although many contemporary approaches are secular, they have been particularly influenced by Christian thinkers. This tradition dates to the 4th century when Augustine of Hippo, also known as Saint Augustine, struggled with how people could reconcile their beliefs about non-violence with the political and military services to their country. Ultimately, the tradition evolved to encompass 6 principles to evaluate the justness of a war. That is, legitimate authority, just cause, proportionality, likelihood of success, last resort, and right intent. All of us experience the shepherding spirit of Pope Francis today. Anytime there is a disturbance in the lives of the people, he gets moved, he gets saddened. He intercedes for his people regardless of nationality or religion, and takes a lead in building peace, thereby trying to put his flock back to the normal living condition. Now, the Ukraine and Russia are two countries that border each other in Eastern Europe. The entire world witnessed Russia sending its army into Ukraine, trying to take over the country by force. Putin claims that Ukrainians and Russians are one people. He sees Ukraine and Russia as brother nations and says that because Russia is the elder brother, it should get to be in charge. Most Ukrainians disagree. The president, Volodymyr Zelensky, tells Putin that Ukrainians want peace. But we know Putin began the invasion to take over the entire country. And we see Ukrainians fighting the Russian army, proving that a nation where its people have no say will definitely face unforeseen consequences. And we see the fearful flight of the Ukrainians for life. In Russia, the citizens had no say about whether to invade. Many moved to protest. Many families have both Russian and Ukrainian members, as we know. Because of this, a lot of people on both sides of the border do not want to fight a war against each other. All that the people look forward is peace, but the power conflicts triggered the war. Pope Francis called on people to observe the first day of the Lent, a day to be close to the suffering of the people of the Ukraine, a day to feel that we are all brothers and sisters and to implore God for the end of the war. He requests the country leaders for an end to the war in Ukraine, for the silencing of the guns, and for opening of humanitarian corridors to those fleeing the war. And he adds, God is with those who work for peace, not with those who use violence. The one who makes war forgets humanity. He doesn't look at the concrete life situations of the people, but he puts before this all the partisans' interests of power. The one who makes war forgets humanity. He doesn't look at the concrete life of people, but he puts before this all the partisan interests of power. He enters himself to the diabolical and perverse logic of arms, which is furthest from the will of God. And he distances himself from the ordinary people who want peace, says Pope Francis. And friends, we all know that the war in Ukraine is resulting in tragic loss of life and human sufferings, as well as causing massive damage to the Ukraine's physical infrastructure. More than 1 million refugees have moved out the neighboring countries. In addition to the human toll, the economic damage the country facing. Energy and commodity prices rising up. The shipyards and airports getting closed. Roads and bridges have been destroyed. Along with this, the big question of recovery and reconstruction possibilities. The possibility of families' reunion. Will they ever meet? These are questions of uncertainty rising from the minds of Ukrainians who lost everything all of a sudden. A chain of challenges follow every Ukrainian citizen in the war zone. Under Ukraine's declaration of martial law, men between the ages of 18 to 60 are barred from crossing the border to join their families as refugees. The vulnerable situations of the families as the men are ordered to stay back to join the territorial defense forces and the fight for the country. Many women have elected to stay in Ukraine and assist the resistance. Many have even taken up arms themselves. Parents bidding bye to the children. Women taking the lead, getting family members out and having to manage in a new place with almost nothing. Displaced women and girls forced to live in temporary or shared shelters, and the increased military presence in Ukraine has created a heightened risk of gender based violence. Families being torn apart, having been forced to flee their homes, and their need for mental and psychological support besides food, water, and shelter. Friends, through all this, we see a flight having nothing to hold on, having nothing to fight for, having nothing to hope for almost, having nothing to look forward to. A situation in complete surrender. Pope Francis said that while our heart is torn for what is happening in Ukraine, he called for an end to the fighting in Ukraine. Joining Pope, let us pray, friends, that the guns be silenced and peace be back in their homes and peace be realized between the Ukraine and Russia. Let us keep in mind the countries like Poland, Romania, Moldova, Slovakia, and other neighboring countries that have welcomed lakhs of refugees and still keep welcoming. May this season of Lent open the corridors of hope and a renewed future for the victims and refugees of this war. May they continue to count on the power of the risen Christ, who has overcome the evil powers of the world and experienced the power of rising again and uniting as members of one family and members of Ukraine nation. Amen.